All right, we are live. I got my microphone working again. Awesome. Welcome, my friends. First live stream of the new year. We've got a fun one. At least fun for me. I hope it's fun for everybody else. I've got a project sent to me or shared with me by one of my students. It's an academic exercise, if you will, where I was sent 14 tracks, each variations of the same basic theme. And I have been asked to see, let me get this taken care of. Where are we? I've been asked to see what I would do with it. What would I touch up? What would I change? How would I arrange these? How would I make realistic MIDI mock-ups? So let's type this out, shall we? So these are the chord progressions. All right, the challenge. All right. I have been given 14 MIDI tracks, 16 bars each. Each one is a different variation of the same theme. I have been challenged, or I've been asked to see what I would do with these. What would I change? How would I arrange them? How would I make realistic MIDI mock-ups, making sure I like a realistic performance with my computer? And so I think I'm going to do this for a couple weeks. I'd say no more than 3. And just have some fun with it. We'll see what I come up with. But today, my idea is I would like to come through here and make some changes to the melody first off. So we've got some different examples. You'll see. We'll see a melody with the chord progression, the melody and chord progression getting reversed. We have the melody played by cello. We have the melody augmented or diminuted, or blinking on my terms right now. But basically sped up with faster rhythms. We have a version of the melody where it's a bit of a heterophonic texture. It's an embellishment of it with the strings playing. We've got a double of the melody with counter melody. We've got the melody reversed. We've got the melody rewritten and reharmonized using negative harmony. We've got all these different things. So this is quite different from what I normally work with. First off, this is the type of melody we're working with here is called a subject. The type of theme is called a subject. A subject is basically the melody of a fugue. It is a Baroque period piece of music, written through those rules. And the whole point of a subject is to transform. The idea of a fugue subject is that it needs to be able to flip upside down, reverse, get chopped up. It's supposed to be used to show how clever, all the different ways you can do with the melody. It reminds us of how different topics and different styles change over the different generations. This is not the type of melody I typically work with. I don't usually work with fugue subjects. I am not a fugue composer. I usually, I'm going to say here, work with tunes if we want to be technical. So there are lots of different types of categories of melodies. A tune is a simple, singable, and memorable melody. That's what I specialize in. I specialize in melodies that are catchy, are memorable, that can be sung quite easily. And the trick behind a tune follows inherent structures / patterns. What's going on? Why is it? Okay, there we go. Things like sentence structure, period structure. We've got all these different things like A, B, C, that's sentence structure. A, B, A, C, that's period structure. So we'll say AABC, ABAC, etc. So a tune has a predictable pattern. A tune typically remains within an octave range up to an octave plus a perfect fifth. All right. That's the general range of most singing voices, so you don't usually go much higher than that. You want to keep it within a singable range. In other words, it typically stays in a singable range. All right, can y'all hear me? I want to double check. All right, good. Yeah, microphone is working. Let's double check here. Can you hear the piano? Yes, you can. Wonderful. So let's see here. So that's going to be my first order of business. My first order of business is going to be seeing, can I make some small, subtle tweaks so it still functions as a subject, but has more tuneful qualities. So right now, the most typical answer right here is the piccolo. The one written piccolo flute answer alternate 1. Actually, no, I don't think that's the most typical one. I think, well, let's see here. Is it the cello one? Which is, it's cello, but it's piano. So as typical with most subjects, you can see with the subject melody, it's based off a very simple idea, and that simple idea gets explored. We have this little idea here. And then this idea gets reversed a little bit. So we have, it gets reversed, it gets a little more rhythm added in, but the idea goes, we go from E to D, D to E. Then we have another exploration of it. We see some more demonstrations. The reason why this isn't quite tuneful is there's no predictable, there's no, not necessarily predictable. Well, no, yeah, I want to say no predictable. There's no predictable pattern. And that's the primary difference between something more like an academic subject than a tune. So if I were to take this idea, let's mute this, and I were to just try to come up with a tuneful version of it, I would start off with my main motif. Then I'd probably repeat it just to legitimize it. And if I wanted to, I could actually follow. There are two different ways I could do this. I'm looking for a pattern. So that's what I'll do. I'll stick to the original as much as possible. Where's my sustain pedal? And then I'm going to repeat my main idea. And then once I've repeated my idea, because this repetition becomes important again, let's demonstrate this a little bit. We have our idea. We have a variation of our idea. And then we have a return to our original idea. I'm using something called period structure here. The chat is very quiet today. I like that. We'll take this idea from over here. And because this is our... Because I would like, personally, at the end of my phrases, I like to slow down my energy a little bit so they sound like complete ideas. I'm going to stretch this idea out. I'm taking this from over here. Instead of adding it like this. You know what? No, let's leave it. We can do that. I'll take this idea and I will repeat it. And so now, this is a very simple... I like that. I know that's not the harmony. That's not the original harmony. But you can see how, even though this doesn't necessarily go in a massive range, by adding just a little bit of predictability, a little bit of structure, we take the essence, the basic idea of the melody. And you know what? Here's what we'll do to make this applicable to people. Let's see here. We'll change this topic slightly, the perspective of our topic. Why is your melody not tuneful? All right, so tuneful, again, for those of you who are just joining us, a melody that is tuneful is a melody that is catchy, easily sung, memorable. You might have heard composers referred to as like tunesmiths. John Williams is a tunesmith. Hans Zimmer can be a tunesmith. Sometimes he likes to do much of the more like the crazy, weird stuff. John Powell is definitely a tunesmith from How to Train Your Dragon. You've got things like older composers like Mozart was a tunesmith. Beethoven was a tunesmith. Well, Beethoven technically wasn't a tunesmith. He was more of a motivic writer. But tunes are catchy, easily sung, memorable melodies. Tchaikovsky was an incredible Romantic era tunesmith. These were composers who had a gift for melody writing. Reason number one why your melody usually is lacking, it is not tuneful, is it probably lacks a clear pattern-based structure. All right, so here we have the original melody, which was not meant to be tuneful. Uh-oh, which one was I in? This one. This was not meant to be tuneful. This was meant to be a fugue statement, a fugue subject. That was the main idea. Then the idea of a fugue statement or a subject is that it's a short idea that gets built up and it can be chopped up, it can be reversed, it can be put in different orders, it can be flipped upside down, it can be played faster, slower. The idea of a fugue is to show how flexible and how many different directions your idea can go in. And as such, not many fugues end up being very tuneful, unless, of course, they are written by Johann Sebastian Bach, who is a masterful tunesmith and a quintessential Baroque period composer. But so I took this subject that was shared with me by one of my gifted students, and now I've made it more tuneful already by applying just that simple subject. And I was just harmonizing it on the fly, using my teeny little keyboard here. And then as a project, reason number two. You probably don't repeat it enough. Repetition in music legitimizes. This is one of the oldest rules of music. Legitimizes, there it is. I think that's how you spell it. I don't know. I'm terrible at spelling. If you have an idea, that was a random idea, I can legitimize it by repeating it. One more time. And now it starts to sound almost like a weird, quirky little melody. You can do all kinds of weird stuff. That was obviously not the most beautiful piece of music I've written, but you can see how any idea happening once can be cool. But you repeat it, maybe with a bit of variation, like inversions. And you keep doing that until you interrupt your pattern and do something else. Repetition in music legitimizes something as being deliberate, as being part of a pattern. If you do not repeat your idea, it doesn't get legitimized. Now, of course, there are some pieces of music that don't repeat anything at all. Those are usually not tuneful. Remember, what I am helping with melody-wise is I am helping you write a very specific type of melody. A tune. And tunes are catchy. They are easily sung. They are memorable. Not all music needs to be tuneful. Not all good music is tuneful. Lots of incredibly beautiful music is not necessarily a tuneful melody. Beethoven's Fifth, bum 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 bum, is not tuneful. It's much more motivic. It goes all over the place. It's not easily sung. It has a massive range. It's catchy, but it's not a tune. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Y'all are being super quiet. I can see I've got people on here. But what are anybody got questions? Anyone want to push back? Requests? Ideas? Let me know. But, so this subject, since I am a tuneful composer, that's what I like to work with. I like to work with tunes. I like to work with melodies. Working on this arrangement, that's the first thing that stuck out to me. I probably won't stick to this. I might bring this in later. But with the challenge I was given to take this subject that has had all of these beautiful different arrangements and see what I can do with them, my first step, if I was hired to arrange this, would be to make it more tuneful. So now I need to find a different ending. Because we're looking at structures. We have our period structure melody. But now we have a question and we have an answer. I like to have my question answer actually more be like an answer question. I like to end with more of an interesting ending, something that seems less... So if you ever hear the terms question and answer in music, this is one thing I don't like is Cubase 15 doesn't let me open up the notes from the MIDI file as like I can. All right. If you ever hear question and answer in music, it means this. A question equals a phrase that feels like it has a weak ending. An answer is a phrase that feels like it has a strong ending. What do I mean by weak and strong? All right, so if I ended a phrase, hey, what's up, Tamashi? If I ended a phrase like this, sounds rather weak, right? I want to go. It wants to go here. Right? Basically, a weak ending is an ending that feels like it shouldn't end there. It feels like there's supposed to be more to come. So if I go... It wants to go, right? Now, you might not know exactly where it wants to go. You might not know exactly how it wants to end, but you know that it wants to keep going. On the other hand, if I go like this, sounds like it's over, right? It sounds like that could be a good ending. Sounds like a strong ending. That's an answer. An answer feels like, okay, awesome. We're good. We got what we wanted. We're done. Comparatively, there are different various levels of answers. You get an answer that answers a single question. You have a phrase that ends an entire piece of music, etc. There's ranges to this. I have a video about this. If you want to look up tabletop composer questions and answers, it should pop up. It's in my melody playlist. A question is any phrase that feels like it doesn't. Yes, you are, Tamashi. Welcome to the chat. Thank you, my friend. All right, so back to the challenge. I usually like to end my phrases with something a little more interesting, something with a bit more momentum. So let's repeat this. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Dum da da dum dum da da dum. Da 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 da. It's just, yep, like that. Very simple. And suddenly, we've got a new, more tuneful version of this. Again, nothing wrong with a subject, a fugue subject. I just personally, as a composer, I like to work with tunes. So that would be the first thing I do. The next thing I would do is right now you'll notice in both of these, we have a very robotic velocity. What that means is every note is performed with identical force, identical speed. It's going to sound very robotic. So what I'm going to do, that's not how people play. People don't go... It gets boring very quickly. People play more expressively, more emotionally. Another definition for y'all. If you ever hear the term expressive, you ever hear someone describe music as expressive or lacking expression. Another way people will say that it's just not an emotional performance. All this means is the performer makes subtle shifts to pitch, dynamics, and or timbre in real time. So what might this look like? Right now, nothing is being manipulated other than pitch and rhythm for the melody. So a pitch, manipulated pitch might be like adding vibrato to a long note, gradually. Changing the timbre could be changing the dynamics halfway through a note, making subtle little shifts. So instead of playing this very robotically like this, we could have little shifts in dynamics. So you could have little shifts in a rubato performance, meaning the tempo is played faster or slower. There are lots of different things you could do like that to make it more expressive. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to mute this. I'm just going to play it naturally. See what comes to me as I play this. I messed up that little bit. How are you doing, Tamashi? It's been a minute since I've... No, actually, it was a minute, but you've been coming to more and more streams lately. It's good to see you again, my friend. How are you doing? All right, get this one up. You know what? Let's just add it. You can see already, need to lengthen this a little bit. Adding a little bit of imperfection, a little bit of variability. We've already added a more emotional performance. If I play some chords underneath it. I've got the sustain pedal is messing me up there. Let me delete my sustain that I recorded while playing. Let's see here. So now this line was marked as cello. A cello performing this. So let's get this more, let's give this a cello to perform it, shall we? Let's do solo cello. You know what? I don't need any of these performances. Let's go back. Let's do the legato patch. I do like the legato patch. So this library I'm pulling up right here is Spitfire Solo Strings. This is one of the earlier libraries I ever purchased. Did I say purchased? One of the earliest libraries I ever purchased. It's a very good library. Let's drop this. A little sensitive though, because one of the things I don't care much for about this library is especially the legato performance, the total performance, it's controlled by velocity. So if I play these two notes softer, it's more of a portamento where it slides from one to the other. If I play them louder, it's a slightly different approach. The manual, where is the manual? Breaks it down. How it's controlled. This is a little random. You guys always want to make sure you want to read the manuals of your libraries. You're always going to learn super important things. So legato mode, let's see, long tremolo, legato kind of simple. So this breaks down what it is. There's 3 different types of legato used in this library: fingered legato, bowed legato, and portamento legato. When we get to the section about, where is it? So this is the appendix. That's not what we want. Overlook, register with content player. There's some part here where it breaks down how the total performance. If you don't extend it, legato patches, modify patches line, please play the notes joined up so you can play the notes. It's especially popular single solo top lines. At this point, let's see here. Articulations, power chip. I'm looking for a long saltando, long expressive vibrato, so ponticello, short articulations, trills, legatos. So this breaks down the types of legato, but where is the breakdown of how it happens? They've got something here somewhere. I don't know. I feel like I'm wasting your guys' time looking at this. I know it's in here somewhere. Somewhere in this manual, they break down how the different choices are made. Vibrato's on. Let's try a different library, though. What if I do the Tina Guo library? Oof, that sucks, dude. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's part of getting older, I suppose. Yeah, I didn't I am 30. I didn't have access to like a smartphone until my sophomore year in college. That's when I got one. I started traveling for work, and so I needed the GPS and stuff. So when I was your age, it was a different world. We weren't expected to constantly have the internet. But that definitely sucks. So I'm sorry to hear that. Let's do the acoustic cello. Let's see here. So for those of you who are just joining us, I was given a challenge, sent a fugue subject by a student of mine just to see what I would do with it and what different things. So what I'm doing today is I've been doing a bit of a melody workshop because I don't care much for subjects as terms of a melody. Nothing wrong with them, but the point of a subject as a melody is to be transformable. The idea of a strong fugue melody is an idea that the melody can be played backwards, it's still a melody. It can be played upside down, it's still a melody. You can chop it up and rearrange it, and it's still catchy. Catchy. The purpose of a fugue subject is to be able to transform. I don't usually work with subjects. I usually work with tunes. The two are not mutually exclusive, but just for my methods, I tend to work with tunes. A tune is a catchy, singable, memorable melody. All right? Tunes typically follow inherent patterns. They typically stay within a singable range. And so I've done this as a little way of like a little workshop, how I would transform melodies. If you sent me a melody and you were like, this just isn't working, why doesn't this melody work? I'd say step number one, it probably lacks a clear patterned structure. If you can do that, it's going to work much better. You probably don't repeat it enough. So once you have a tune, you should probably repeat it at least once before you do anything else to it. Before you transform, before you change it, before you express and see how clever you are as a composer, you should repeat it once at least so your audience can remember it. Sticking with this concept, step number 3, it may be non-symmetrical or asymmetrical. All right, most tunes will be symmetrical. They don't have to be, but that can be a common issue with tunes. Is you're like, all right, I've got a 2-bar idea followed by a 3-bar idea, then a 2-bar idea, then like a 1-bar idea. No matter how you cut that up, it's not symmetrical. And if it's not symmetrical, it lacks a sense of predictability. Now, sometimes asymmetry can be very useful. If you are inspired by a lot of the older Romantic era Russian composers like Tchaikovsky or Stravinsky, lots of those composers used the inspiration of their own Slavic language. Lots of Slavic cultures don't have typically symmetrical melodies because their languages are not symmetrical, and because most music cultures are influenced by language. Because you think about it, the one instrument everyone has, or most people has, is a singing voice. And so the languages we use to sing influence our cultural musical heritage. But that being said, that there are exceptions to the rule. But if your melody is not symmetrical, that's one reason why it may not be catchy, why it might not be clicking as you'd like. But right now, next, I was working on making it a bit more expressive. So I click the Alt button, I click with my mouse, and I drag, and here we go. Where's Museo? Why is it not playing? Ah, I didn't load it. I downloaded it and didn't load it. Here we go. There we go. That's why I like this one. I find, in general, Museo libraries sound better out of the box, but Spitfire libraries have greater potential. The reason why Spitfire libraries tend to have much more potential is they're much more customizable. There's so much more you can do with them. The problem with having so many different ways to customize an instrument in Spitfire is the fact that you have to know how to customize it. And so it's not going to sound good unless you do all those customizations, because it's just so much potential. Museo libraries tend to be much simpler, and they sound great out of the box. They're a little less customizable, but they work really well. So let's see what this sounds like with a Museo performance. A very, very small range. When you have such a limited range with a melody like this, you really rely on having a very expressive performance, which we can have. And it also relies on things like the accompaniment. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add contact library. I'm going to pick a high strings. I like the idea of having like a high pedal point if I'm going to be doing this. So let's look at some harmony here. I've changed it. There was a chord progression, a very beautiful chord progression that came with this. But since I've changed the melody, I'm going to assume the chord progression doesn't work as well as it used to. Carius, I'm a new one. Which playlist on your channel should I watch first? That is a fantastic question, my friend. I would ask, what are your goals? What are you hoping to work on? And like, what kind of level are you at? I can recommend a couple different spots. But right off the bat, if you are a complete beginner, this is what I'm going to recommend to you, my friend. Go to my website. If it loads. I've been having some issues with the internet here, unfortunately. Tamashi, there's a weird phenomenon I noticed recently. I started listening to Turkish music, and I've observed that my phrasing has changed so that my music now sounds similar to Turkish music. That's not strange, my friend. That's called being influenced. It's called inspiration. Most composers start writing music that sounds like the music that they are listening to. Here we go. But that is awesome. That's one of the reasons why you should listen to lots of different music, is it influences you and gives you different ideas. Why did I click on the blog? Go to the Academy tab on my friend Carius Z. I have 4 free classes. I am uploading a free one as we speak. I've got only, I think, like 2 or 3 more videos to upload for the mixing class, and then the mixing class is going to go right here. Then there is another class, a notation and music class. I had just wrapped up a fundraiser. I want y'all to know a tremendously generous supporter came through in clutch and donated the remainder of the mile marker for the final one. So all 3 classes, I haven't been able to update my website yet, but all 3 classes did end up getting funded in the past 3 months. So in addition to the classes here, we have one on mixing, one on reading and writing sheet music, and one on making realistic performances with sound libraries, all coming to the Academy, my friends, which are 100% free classes. So Carius, this is where I would recommend. If you are a beginner, I would recommend with Music Theory and Harmony 1. That's what I would start with. Then I would move on to Music Theory and Melody 1. All right? Then Orchestration 1, and then Orchestration 2. So just kind of follow the order. That's what I would do if I were you. It depends on the style of music you want, though. So if you've got something specific you'd like, let me know. But for now, there is like I said, free class on my website. This is something I'm very passionate about, is making free education. I was forced to drop out of music school because I couldn't afford the ridiculous cost of tuition. And so now I got a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I try to share as much as I can find. Happy to help, my friend. So I was thinking, so chord progression. So we'll go. Bear with me. This is gonna sound... Bear with me, my friends. This is gonna sound a little weird. Let's record. Let's watch this first. Let's record some chords. So again, patience, please. Let's do this. Let's go to... This is supposed to be a piano. Let's do piano. I am recording some chords so I can come up with a good pedal point. Let's do this. So then we'll change those chords a little bit, quantize a little bit. So it wasn't, that last one didn't work too well. Let's pop this up. So what I'm looking for is I've made just some quick harmony. Again, this came with some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful harmony. But I have changed this melody so much that I'm afraid the harmony probably won't work well. And just because everything's live and I want to keep things moving relatively quickly, I'm going to just do this. Reharmonize. So I am going to create a very, very soft top line here. And we're going to create a bass line as well. Let's pop this in. right, it doesn't sound like much yet. Bear with me. Let's bring this up a little bit. Let's make sure that we're not conflicting too much. Let's do A here. E, let's do B. So changing to make sure, I'm just following a couple of rules that you can learn in the orchestration class to make sure that I'm not creating too many crunchy tones here. There we go. Let's drop this. And then let's look at this with our cello. And then let's mute this cello and perform the cello part, shall we? It's getting a little confusing looking at this. But let's play this. If you guys have questions while I'm doing all this, let me know. Let's slow this down a little bit. This feels like it should be slower. Let's do 90. What's going on here? Something's not working quite. Let's move this here. Oh, so this is a duplicate. Let's just open this one. And let's delete these lines here. These here. And so this is our melody that we came up with. This is the adaptation. See if I drop it an octave. Things I like about this library. It has a very beautiful, intuitive sound. It has a very beautiful, gradual application of vibrato that sounds very natural. You'll hear how it starts off with almost no vibrato at the beginning of the note, and then gradually adds like a very real performer. Things I don't like. There's a bit of a delay. Like when I hit that note, you guys can't see because of the camera, but if I hit that note, there's a slight delay, which makes it very difficult to play fast, repetitive notes like this. So if I wanted to perform this, I'd actually probably swap from a legato for this one bar. But the whole idea of adding these together was to just have a little bit more accompaniment thrown in there. We can actually see. We can get full chords going on here, actually. That'd be fun. Oops, I just realized that's not the line. I was harmonizing. Here we go. So this one right here. This is the low strings. Let's... I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I'm just enjoying myself. Any questions? Let's see here. Tamashi, yes, arranging challenge of the stream. Yeah, it's basically... So that was the idea. You've been on here for a long time, Tamashi. You understand that the... sometimes it changes things a little bit. But what I was given is this was the challenge. I was given 14 tracks, each one a different variation of the same fugue subject. I was just asked to see what I would do with these. What would I change? How would I arrange them? How would I make realistic MIDI mockups? So since the beginning of this stream, you weren't here at the very beginning, I don't think, I took this original idea right here, which is a fugue subject. A fugue subject is a very specific type of melody where we have this simple idea right here. And it gets flipped backwards, it gets turned upside down, it gets chopped up. And so my first order of business was to change it from a fugue subject to more of a tune. That's what I did, without changing too much, because I'm trying to stay within the heart of the piece, which this melody has a very limited range. The largest range is D to G. It's a perfect fourth. So when I made my adjustments and I made it a little more tuneful, I did so by establishing a more clear pattern, some variation, some structure. I kept to that same very limited range. So then I need to find contrast through other means. Those other means that I'm working with right now is a little bit of accompaniment. So if this is my idea, this is the wrong one. If that's my melody, I'm going to change the chords, the accompaniment, to add a bit more contrast. So let's bring this up a little bit. We've got a nice chord here. Let's do... a D minor chord here instead. And then let's do a G major chord again. And then this was an E minor, so let's put this one up to B. Let's see what this sounds like. So let's drop this down a little bit. Then we've got E minor here, C major here to kick things off. Then it was a D minor again. Let's do... No, this is... Should I want to... I kind of like the idea of the pedal point. No, let's stick to it. So let's take this lower wound. And what I want is essentially a nice low end, a nice soft high end, and then let's actually record this one. Oh no, I've got some mod data already, some modulation data. You can see those little spikes. That's modulation data controlling the volume a little bit. Let's see what this sounds like with the cello. I messed up that little bar, and there's a couple things that don't sound quite delicious. First things first, I'd probably add more contrast here. That's what I would be thinking right now. I want contrast. With such a simple melody, where the melody does not have a lot of contrast, I need that contrast to come from elsewhere in the arrangement. I like the idea of having a very still moving upper voice. So I'd probably want some movement in the lower range. Let's pop this on here. So like in the strings, instead of going... So actually, is this lower than it can go? Oh, so no, I brought my thing. I'm too low, that's the issue. Instead of doing something boring like that, I would probably want to do something, add a little bit more movement. Just to add, again, a little bit of contrast, but I'm not convinced that the harmony is quite where I'd want it to be for this little idea. Let's play with the cello a little bit more again. Let's try going up to an E G sharp. Let's move up. It's going to be a little bit of a departure. And the thing to keep in mind is that this is actually what I'm playing is an octave lower. Let's play this again. So I messed that up again. This bar right here. This sounds crunchy to me. Let's change that. I can change that through two different strategies. Right now, I've got a monophonic chord or instrument played. So right now I've got the chord progression C major, D minor, G major, E minor. Then I go back to C major, D minor again, E major, A minor. I feel like the A here in my bass line doesn't work. What if I swapped that down to F? Let's move to the cello, see what happens here. See if this sounds any better. I'm actually going to move this up a little bit. I don't want to go too high because, again, I'm trying to respect the... I'm trying to respect the nature of the original melody. Oh, too much. Has the commission coming along? Slow, but good. I've gotten sketching out all the melodies. I'm sketching out all the main ideas, the melodies, the chords and stuff. And then it's going to be time to start arranging, which is always fun. All right. I'm going to give this, unfortunately, haven't been able to watch too many movies or films or anime or anything like that recently. I just want to see something in theaters. I can't remember what it was. It was okay. That's probably why I can't remember what it was. But yeah. I've been too busy. I've been busy building the 3 new classes. Technically, I'm working on 4 courses right now. Because I've got the 3 classes, 5. I'm working on 5 different classes right now. The 3 for the fundraiser, 1 for native instruments, which is the new synthesizer series, and the 5th one is my narrative, like, theme writing class, which I have not forgotten. I am very sorry for everybody who's in the beta testing. So sorry for how long that's taking me. It's just I got so busy that I haven't been able to work on it as much as I would like to. But let's listen to this one more. Let's play this one more time. I like that. That's showing some promise. That's something. Still not entirely happy with it. Probably just because I'm going based off ear. I'd have to definitely touch up these performances a bit more. But that works better, in my opinion. Probably not as a fugue statement. If I were to flip this backwards, let's see. Mirror, reverse. Nope. What's my shortest note? My shortest note is a 16th. Let's do that. Let's do functions, reverse. No, that doesn't work out. What is the mirror? Maybe it's mirror. There it is. Is that it? Oh, yeah. So that this probably doesn't work as well as a melody backwards. Nope. We could try repeating it, see if that legitimizes it. And the reason why is this now, even though it worked really well on the other way around, the reason why it doesn't work mirrored is because it doesn't have any structure. The same structure doesn't have the simple pattern of having an idea, new idea, repeat the same idea, new idea. It has one idea, completely different idea, another completely different idea, and then the second idea. It's not as intuitive. It's not symmetrical. And